gone. Now they have the equivalent of 7 cents. And though on paper they could, say, sell a whole bunch of securities back to the government and take that money back out of the money supply and effectively reduce the inflation, they haven't, for probably very human reasons, I'm guessing.
Well, remember the money is supposed to reflect the net wealth of the United States, and as that goes up, the money has to go up too, somehow.
Right? Sure.
Because because otherwise you have deflation, which is terrible.
Well, tell me about deflation then, because there's a difference between, I think, what you say deflation is and the increase of purchasing power of the money in your pocket. But
what happens is if I can wait 2 days and the thing I need to buy is going to be $100 less, I'll wait 2 days and buy it then. Or I might wait 4 days and have it be, $300 less, whatever it's going to be. So what happens is if there's a perceived deflationary phenomenon going on, people wait to purchase, and basically the GDP or GNP, whatever, goes to hell in a handbasket because people don't move, the money doesn't move anymore. And so, what happens is, and that's, I think, what I understand is that's what was happening in Japan over the last decade, right? Where basically the banks were just did not want to risk inflation apparently, and they didn't want to print money, whatever they had to do to beat deflation, and so they left it in this really awful state for a decade until I'm not really sure what brought them out of it ultimately, but maybe they finally decided to address the monetary policy. There was some. I'm talking stuff I don't know anymore, but I've heard. I think that there was a certain pride in the banking system that they had certain policies that they were just very, very philosophically committed to, that they couldn't let go of, and that was part of the problem.
That might be. I don't know. I do know that Japan still considers itself in a major recession, if not a depression. They're more loose with that kind of terminology than we are in the West. So, I don't really know. But
one of the
at the same time, if that's your fear in as far as deflation is concerned, then what I would probably argue is whether or not the inflation or the rate of devaluation of the dollar is equal to the amount necessary for this sort of catastrophic deflation scenario that you mentioned, where in the case that you seem to be describing, that would necessarily need a very dramatic drop in value over a very short period of time. Where if a economy is booming, even in the greatest of booms, that the increase will be a gradual one, and probably and prices will be affected in a more gradual way, rather than day by day, that you would have to buy some things on a regular basis. You couldn't say wait 2 months from now before you bought your next meal or whatever it might be.
Of course. I mean, so there are fixed costs that we all have to live, right? But I don't. We're getting into nuances that I'm not sure I have any qualifications to speak about. But it just strikes me that it's certain that the U.S. wealth increases year on year, and so it's not unreasonable that the total supply of money also increases year on year.
Well, now here's the problem with that, though, is that we say that it increases year by year, and I don't. It's difficult to know how they are measuring those amounts. Is it GDP? Is GDP continuing to rise? How are they calculating the GDP, and so on? I mean, I know that, like, when you say, and this is of slight relation, when you look at the Dow Jones on CNN, they're marking that denominated by dollars. But if you were to look at those same Dow Jones numbers and had it denominated in real money or gold or other commodities even, it's a completely different graph that it prints off. And so to say that we continue to gain wealth may very well be the case. But at the same time, I don't know, transparency. I think what you were saying earlier, that it can get very convoluted. I mean, I think we both are, when we talk about this, we both feel that there are nuances to this subject that people aren't informed of and really ought to be informed of. And
Yeah.
I think that's a very major problem.
So,
Well,
that
cool.
was another topic I wanted to hit on, which was how the Fed adds money, which I don't know that the interesting thing is that, right, when the Fed holds dollar bills, they're worthless, right? Because it's a debt to itself apparently somehow, and then when the Fed gives somebody else a dollar bill, then it is when it has value. So that's what happens. The Fed, I guess it was interesting. I read the Fed pays 4 cents per bill to the mint for whatever bill they buy, right? And then from that they distribute it as necessary to follow their policies for money supply. The money policy, I guess, is what it's called, monetary policy.
Right.
And the interesting thing that was underscored, that I sort of, I guess, was peripherally aware of, is that the Fed is not really a government. It's not owned by the government. The Fed is 12 private banks, which are governed by the what is the board called? The Board of Governors, right? Which are appointed, but the Open Market Committee, the FOMC, is those people. Which I guess there's 2 vacancies right now, but there's those 7 governors plus I think 5 from each bank or something. It looks like there's a lot of them there, so it is
It's a little
largely
creepy.
well, yeah. I mean, it seems really weird to have the banks print the money, but then there are subtleties to the meaning of money that are not anywhere near anybody's everyday expectation of what money actually is.
Well,
right?
it's just a medium of trade. That's all. It's instead of like, I teach English, you don't need English to be taught, but if we're the only 2 in a society, I need some way to get your service of whatever that happens to be. And it's just that next step from the barter system is really all that it has. It could be seashells, it could be Walt Disney's toenails, but anything that is finite that you can't inflate. And that's just historically it's gold, but it could be anything really.
Yeah.
The difficulty though is the thought that a fiat currency can change value, or when, say, like you print off another dollar, that dollar is equal to the value as every other dollar that has been printed, and it doesn't. They all are just a fraction of a sort of a very ambiguous sense of value, being whatever people think it ought to be valued.
Right.
So it's all very, it's all very ambiguous. I agree, and that's just the nature of it.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that the total dollar value, right, was like $7 trillion. That is the total money supply in the broadest sense. I mean, the currency is like 3% of that, but the broadest, the M3 number, whatever. And I guess this was a little bit outdated, but it was somewhere in the single-digit trillions, right? And that was just. That seemed low to me, honestly. I figured that there's got to be more wealth out there than just $7 trillion. That just seems
right.